Welcome back. So now that we have a unit test that makes sure that we actually call that method find all, let's do a test that actually makes sure that we even return something when we actually call the get products. So that's the next unit test, that when we call get products, this should actually be returned, right? That's kind of the goal of it. So instead of returning null, we're going to return the find all, whatever we're getting back from that repository. I'll go down to my test, and I just prepared a small test right here. It's a fact that says get products, no filter, will return a list of all products. Again, it should be self-explanatory, but it's up to you if you can find a better name. First thing I'll do is I'll just make a mock again. It's going to be a new mock, and it's going to be, of course, of the type iProduct repository, just to kind of get that into our system again. There we go. So now we have that mock, and now we're going to do something. We're going to ask the mock to set something up, because we're going to fake this time that when I call that repository, I'm going to fake that I return a list. So this is kind of a new thing. We talked about it earlier, I showed you quickly, but think of it this way. Instead of creating a database that I want to kind of try to talk to, that takes time to instantiate, it takes time to get the data, create the data, read the data, we're going to instead fake what would happen if we call the iRepository. So we're going to make it look like we're calling that method and make it look like we expect to get something back. In this case, I'm just going to return a list of 2 different products, but it could be anything you want to test. The way we do it is first we say setup, and then we can actually call right here with the lambda expression. We can say R for repository, and then we can do the fat arrow and do another R, and then here we can put in the method that we want to fake, what should happen. And when we call this method right here, what should actually happen? Now what I want to do right here is actually I want to return something. So I can't do that right now, and the reason is, again, since we're doing this test driven, I still actually in the repository interface, if I go into that method inside the product repository interface right here, I'll just control click right here, and you'll see I'm still just doing a void right here. So I can't do a return statement. So actually the test framework helps me again and says there's no return statement because you cannot return anything from a void. If I go back though to the find all, and I do this one will return a list of products like this, there we go. Now I can actually, if I go back, call the returns. And again, that's a way for the framework to kind of protect you and to force you into actually doing test-driven development right here. We're not going to add that return statement right here and explain it's going to return a list of products in the repository until we actually need it. Now we can use the return, and here's where we define what we should return when we fake that we call the find all in the repository. Again, remember, I'm not testing the repository, I'm testing the service actually. So I'm just faking what should happen when I call that repository. Sweet. I'm going to just make a simple list right here. You can make whatever you want. I'll just make a new list, and it's going to be a list of products. I'm just going to make a couple of products inside it. Now we have the list available right here with these products, and what I can do is actually just add the list and explain to the system now that when you actually call find all from the service, I'm going to return from the repository a list, and it's exactly this list right here. Okay, so the next step will be, if we go back to the next step right here, it'll be to create the service. So I'll make the service again, equals new, and then I'll make a product service. There we go. And then I'll pass in again, like we've done so many times now, the object from the mock, meaning that now we've instantiated a fake implementation of our interface. And then the final thing is I'm going to call service.getProducts, and now I can actually test that. So what I want to do is I want to kind of say assert like this, equal, like this, and then I can actually equal that what I'm getting back here is the same as what I'm expecting. So if you are into unit testing and you really want to make this pretty, what we could do is we could call this list up here expected, like this, and we could just grab this down here and just move it outside, actual, like this, and then you use the names that you're using in unit testing. I know that's, again, maybe a sidetrack, but I think it's important that when you do stuff like this to refactor your code, it's easier to kind of see your actual work right here. You have the expected list and you have the actual list right here. Let's try and run this unit test now, and hopefully it fails, right? Because the first time when you do test-driven, you should actually have a failing test. And I know a lot is going on here, and there's a lot that you might not understand yet, but this is the way of test-driven development. So just give it time. It'll start to make more and more sense every time you write a test. Now it fails right here because if I call this method, you'll notice, if I look at the error over here, you'll see I expected to get a list. I expected that, but I actually got null back. And why is that? Well, if we go into our repository, into our service, you'll notice that the method actually now returns null. So let's just remove that return statement now and just go and return the actual thing we're finding right here. return, and there we go. Now we did test-driven development again to kind of return this actual thing right here. And let's try and rerun our test. Now again, you have to remember that even though this seemed tedious to write all this code in order to do that simple test, because you could have done it like you just had to move a return statement, right? It's now protected for future changes. And you'll see that later when we start refactoring our code, because we will do that later. So that's it for this lesson. We're actually done now. We just created a test that makes sure that both that we are actually calling the findAll method and also that we're actually returning the list of products that we are getting back from the repository. Notice that's what I'm actually testing here, that whatever I'm getting back from the findAll, I'm going to return that in the get products. So that's it for this lesson. See you next time. Bye.